going to keep this intro short because if you saw the timestamp, you know this video is long. And if you saw the title, you know this video is awesome. But quick introduction. So when I started thinking about how feasible it was for me to actually make Captain Moriah's Map of the World into a pilot or a full series, at the time I was just thinking it was like network or bust. And then I saw this video called Song in the Sky, and my mind was blown. Here was a beautiful, engaging work on YouTube that had reached a really dedicated audience. So without further ado, please enjoy my interview with Sam Frederich, creator of Song in the Sky. Anyway, thank you for joining me today.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, it's totally a pleasure. I'm always happy to to talk about my cartoons. So like, yeah, thanks for the excuse to gab about it.
Yeah, of course. So I know a little bit about your project because I've been following it for a few years, ever since I found it on YouTube. But for people who aren't aware, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and about your I think you have a few things in the work, but the project I'm mostly interested in right now is Song in the Sky, which is how I found you.
So yeah, I'm Sam Frederich. I'm an animator from Los Angeles. A couple of years ago, I made an animated pilot called Song in the Sky that's about a world where a couple hundred years ago, the ground just fell away, and all that's left is Haven, which is a city floating in the sky that's held up by a mysterious ancient crystal. And the main character is Angela, who is a fighter pilot with a robot wingman named Andy, who is trying to protect her city from these giant eldritch horrors that come from the abyss underneath the clouds. It got some attention. I made it mostly by myself. I did the animation and editing and stuff like that. And now I am almost done with the second episode. I've been saying that for a while now because it keeps seeming like it's almost done, but then something comes up, or I have to change something, or a scene which I think is going to take 1 month ends up taking 3 months, and yada. It's almost done, and yeah, I guess that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Amazing. Well, tell me a little bit more actually about how much you're taking on and how much you're delegating to other people, because for my own project, I am producing it, but there's only so much I can do. I don't have a background in animation, so that's definitely something I'm going to have to find people to help with. But I would love to know more about your process and how much you're taking on with Song in the Sky.
Yeah, well, I mean, with the first episode, I did basically everything myself. I did the concept art, I did all the animation, all the storyboarding. Pretty much everything, and that's kind of the reason why I took on animation as kind of my medium of choice, because if you're willing to kind of put in the time, then you can pretty much tell any story you want, as opposed to live action where there are all kinds of restrictions about where you can film and people's schedules and props and being on set and all that kind of stuff like that. With animation, if again, really the only limiting factor is your time. So that's so with the first episode, I did basically everything. And then after it got a little bit of attention, with the second episode, I've been able to bring on basically a small team to make the second episode, which has been very cool. I mean, anyone who's seen the first episode will know that I'm not a great artist. I'm good enough to kind of get the job done and make it look semi-professional, but I am very limited. And a lot of people complained that the character designs in the first episode look like Nintendo Mii's or something, which fair. Still doing basically all the animation, but I've brought in a couple of artists to do the character designs, to kind of redesign them to be more expressive and just look better in motion. I've got some people doing backgrounds. There's a guy doing the score. I did have one of my friends do the sound design for the first episode, and he's coming back for this one. But the real big surprise, which came at the kind of the tail end of production, was so I had a mechanical designer who was helping out with the designs of the hangar and the technology and kind of redesigning Angela's fighter craft. Basically, I brought him on for a couple of months, and he did some mechanical designs for me. But then I kind of lost touch with him for a little bit, and then he hits me up and he says, "Sam, I've made a whole 3D model of Angela's fighter craft in Blender, like just on my own time." And I checked it out, and and it's beautiful. It's like just the right level of detail, and it's shaded, like, cell shaded, so that it'll like fit in with the existing art style. So then I just asked him, like, "Hey, do you think you could like help me out with the big dogfight scene so we can have some like CG shots?" And he said yes. So like most of the shots are done by me, but I had some big kind of Sakuga moments that he did, which allowed the albatross to fly around in 3D space and dodge projectiles and all kinds of stuff I couldn't do with a sort of 2.5D that I made in the first episode. So that was incredibly cool. I'm still doing most of this stuff, but I've been able to pull in people to kind of fill in the gaps of stuff that I'm not great at, which I think is kind of the goal in any production. Like, I mean, when you're working with budgets as minuscule as mine, like the more hats you can wear, the better. But if you bring in people to do the stuff that you're not great at, then that's extremely good. And
so where do you find those people though, and how do you essentially trust them with your baby? Because I know, like, from my projects in the past that I've done where I've worn a lot of hats, then when I bring in other people, sometimes it can be like, okay, but don't hurt it, I like, how do I trust them? So how did you put your team together?
Honestly, I had it pretty easy because I made the first episode, and I posted it on Reddit, and I was like instantly barraged with artists asking like, "Hey dude, if you're working on a follow-up, can I help you out?" So I basically just did a video that was like a call to a call to action, being like, "Hey, does anyone want to help me out with this? I can pay. Here are my rates. Just shoot me an email." And then I got a bunch of emails and looked through them and basically just picked the people with the best portfolio. So I had it pretty easy. But I mean, for anyone who's not starting off with the kind of leg up that I had, I would say just there's a bunch of subreddits online where artists post their stuff, or you can look on Instagram or or DeviantArt or any places where people post their portfolios. And there are so many amazing artists on the internet. It boggles the mind, and all of them want to work on cool stuff. So if you have a cool project, then and you have a budget that you can afford to pay people for their time and not just in experience or whatever. Then
right, exposure.
exposure. Then yeah, there's really no shortage of great people who want to work out there. So, and as for trusting people with your baby, I would say, part of it is just picking the right people. It's, looking through their portfolio and figuring out like, okay, this person has, really good draftsmanship, but they don't necessarily fit the art style I have in mind, or, this person, fits my art style, but is kind of expensive. And, it's just like finding the right team by just, being diligent with who you're hiring. So that's part of it. But I think the other half of it is just that being a director is all about communication. So just communicating your vision to the people who are working for you. And a lot of the time, that's more of a factor than how necessarily well suited to the job the other person is. Because if you have a person who's an incredibly talented artist, but you're just not communicating to them what you need, then you're probably not going to be satisfied with what they give you. But on the other hand, if you have an artist who's good enough, but you really go into detail and you get on a call with them and make it very clear what you want, and hear their input and all that kind of stuff, then they're probably going to give you what you need, and it'll probably be better than the alternative, I guess. So I think that's the big thing. And also just like in general, if you're gonna make a project that's with a team, you have to be willing to, give up a little of your baby and also just kind of deviate a little bit from the vision that you kind of have in your mind. Because a lot of times, like, and this is especially the case for me when I'm working with voice actors, because you'll write the script and you'll rewrite it, and you'll have very specific voices for the characters in your head and very specific reads. And then when you're in the recording booth or over a Zoom call with them, a lot of the time they'll they'll have a different take from you, or they'll read the line very, with a very different mood than you had originally intended. And a lot of the time it can be kind of tough to shake the preconceptions that you had in your mind, because again, you read it over and over in your head. But most of the times, the voice actors have better ideas than I do, because this is what they do,
Right.
So
Are you doing some of the voice acting remotely then, especially during this time where gathering can be a little bit trickier?
God, I mean, yeah. Well, because this project has been in production for so long, I did I wrote the script, and then I recorded all the lines I thought I'd need with my voice actors, and wherever I could find them. That was be it in their homes or my home, or yeah. And then like a few months ago, I was getting pretty close with the animation, but there were some rewrites which I had done, because I felt that Angela didn't really have as much of an arc as I wanted in this episode, and I thought the whole thing kind of needed a little bit more direction, I guess. So I did some retakes with the original voice actors over Zoom, and then I also filled in a lot of the bit parts with actors again over Zoom, because of the because of COVID and whatnot. The downside of that, of course, is that it becomes sort of a nightmare for your sound designer if you're getting a bunch of different takes from people who might not be using the same microphone, and might have different recording quality that they're gonna then have to try and match in the actual episode.
Mm-hmm.
That was a whole thing to consider, and I actually had to redo one of the recording sessions for my actresses, because I realized that her recording quality just wasn't up to snuff with the rest of it. But yeah, again, it's been a combination of in person and over Zoom, mostly over Zoom since COVID started.
Cool. Well, I also want to ask you a little bit more about your decision to, and how much I guess it was a decision to do this all yourself and post it on YouTube, as opposed to going a more traditional route and pitching it to maybe big networks. I guess also I'm wondering how much of your background is in animation, and I know music actually seemed a huge feature of the pilot episode. It was something that really drew me into it. So wondering what your background is, and then how that influenced your decision to make this and just kind of put it out there in the world yourself.
Yeah, well, as far as my decision to put it on YouTube, I would say that's mostly because YouTube is kind of what I knew at that point. I mean, I'd had a YouTube channel for years at that point, and I posted a couple of little series to it on college. So YouTube was kind of what I knew, and it's also just kind of because at that point when I made Song in the Sky, I didn't really have many credits to my name, or many things that I thought would get the attention of people with money, or production companies or whatnot, to show them that I was serious. Because before that, I'd made some animated shorts which had gotten a little bit of attention, had been to film festivals, won some awards, yada yada, but nothing which I thought was really gonna catch people's attention and show them yeah, this guy knows what he's up to. So I decided to just make it myself, because that's kind of what I knew, and also because with Song in the Sky, I really felt like I had something to prove. I wanted it to be kind of the thing that would hopefully push me to the next level, and get me some attention and show people what I can do. And in the end, it kind of did that. So. And also, it was kind of just one of the nice things about the internet era and animation in general is that it removes a lot of the barriers between you and the thing you want to make. Because when I started Song in the Sky, I had just finished a collaborative project. It turned out okay, but the whole experience of the whole collaborative experience, I realized midway through, we just had completely different ideas of what we wanted it to be. So it kind of turned into this whole nightmare. And by the end of it, I was a little depressed. And it was a pilot, but I didn't really want to do anything more with it. So with Song in the Sky, I was just I just want to make something really cool that's just completely my vision, and just kind of put it out there. And I came up with the concept, and then just kind of did it and put it out in 6 months. So that's
6 months.
Yeah. Well, that's again, the animation's pretty simple. And I had a lot of unnecessary complications at the second episode, which is why it's taken so long. But neither here nor there. Also, the world started ending while I was making it, so that didn't help.
Right.
But yeah, I'd say the main reason I made it myself was just because I wanted to make something, and I had a kind of bolt of inspiration. I just wanted to put it out there. So yeah, that's kind of the other reason.
On that bolt of inspiration for a second, you had mentioned when we had emailed, you were anime influenced, and so I was wondering where the idea for Song in the Sky came from, or if it really was just you putting together everything that you loved and loved about animation.
Yeah, well, I mean, there were some pieces of inspiration which were bigger than others. I mean, like, overall Song in the Sky is kind of just a collection of a bunch of stuff I like. I love steampunk, I love anime, I love post-apocalypse stuff, I love kaiju movies, just ball all that stuff together.
Yeah.
For a couple of pieces of media that did really influence me, one of the big ones was The Nightland by William Hope Hodgson, which is a not super well known kind of like Lovecraftian book from the early 19th century. And it's about a world in which the sun went out thousands of years ago. And so the entire world is like shrouded in night. And there is one gigantic pyramid in the middle of the Nightland that's filled with the last, several million inhabitants of the earth. And it's surrounded by just these gigantic, creatures that are slowly kind of inching their way towards the pyramid. And it is not a book I would recommend to a casual reader because like it is ridiculously tense. Like there is no dialogue in the whole book. It is entirely just like description, and the sentence structures are just insane. It's like Lovecraft to the power of like James Joyce. Like,
oh wow.
Absurd. So I read it, and then I read a different version of it, A Story Retold, which like a more contemporary author took it and kind of translated it, into a more readable prose with dialogue and character development and whatnot. And it sounds like it's, I don't know, tearing up a masterpiece, but I think it's actually the best way to read the book. I think that like the main theme of Song in the Sky is kind of depression, because like if you dig into it, the world is almost like a big metaphor for depression, with like you're always standing right on the brink of feeling like you're falling into something. I wanted to balance that out with fun stuff, because dog fights with giant skull-shaped monsters with a laser shooting robot by your side, that's just gravy. I love that stuff.
Yeah, so, that's great. Cool.
Yeah, and I think you're asking about like my like animation or like songwriting background.
Yeah, I was wondering like how much training do you have in this kind of thing, and how much did you have to learn on the fly?
Well, I am an entirely self-taught animator. I don't have any like animation training, but I've been making like stick figure animation since like middle school. So and just kind of gradually working my way up. Like at first I was doing stick figures, and then I moved onto like Moho, which is the program I use now, which has like actual characters and stuff like that, and just kind of gradually bringing up the production quality and kind of learning as I go. Like I find that, and this is a really bad character flaw, but I have a hard time learning stuff unless it's kind of contributing to a bigger like creative project that I'm working on.
They say necessity is the mother of invention, so I feel like that's a very common thing to feel.
Yeah. So I haven't really taken any classes in After Effects or animating or anything like that. But I've learned pretty much everything as I go making these projects. If I decide like, oh, this it'd be really great if I could have some lens flares in this shot, then I look up how to add lens flares, or which plugins I need to add for that, and kind of learn as I go. Or if I decide like, oh, I'd like to have lasers in this shot, then I look up how to do lasers on After Effects. And honestly, that's a pretty good way to learn. You go to places you wouldn't necessarily think of if you were kind of just trying to take it step by step. Although I will say the downside of that is that I think I'm missing a lot of the kind of fundamentals I would have learned if I had learned things the traditional way. Because again, I think I'm a pretty good animator, and I'm good at like shot composition and a lot of stuff, but I'm not very good at drawing. It just like in general. Most of the time, I always have to either just trace stuff or go like really hard on the references, and I don't know, or honestly just like cut corners whenever I can. And I really should just take a drawing class or sit down and try and just like hammer that out, because I I feel like that would help me out a lot. But again, I have a hard time doing that if it's not like absolutely necessary for the project I'm working on. So
Well, but that's cool too that you still found a way to put something out there that people connected to enough that now they can help you move up to that next level, because
yeah,
that's a lot of like what I've been trying to think about, because I can wear only so many hats. So what is the like lowest common denominator of my idea and all the pieces that go into my idea to put it out there and get people excited about it so they want to help me with everything that I'm missing, you know?
yeah,
And one of the reasons I was excited to talk to you is because I feel like you did that very well, where you had mentioned it was an independent project and yet it somehow sparked like all of this attention, which was great. And I think it was through the heart that your story had, the originality. You had mentioned criticism for the animation, but I still found it very engaging, and the music too was really cool. So
yeah.
so it's neat that you were able to pull these elements, create something that people were excited to help you with in the future.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was. That was very cool. And again, it was mostly because I, had a, because I made something that people liked and wanted to get in on. I would say, if I can give like you some advice, like you say, like I'm assuming you don't really have any experience with like animation or like drawing or stuff like that. But your big experience is in writing, and I know that from reading your little overview. Like it's very engaging. Like I like
Thank you.
you've clearly got it where it counts. So I would say, like, I think your best bet for getting people on board is probably to make a really good pitch Bible. Get an artist to just do some concept art for you. Like there are tons of artists out there who are willing to, who again, if they think your thing is cool or interesting, are willing to work for probably a lot less than you're thinking. I think the other thing is just find examples or like images that give an idea of what you're going for. Like, but you can just go like character by character, just like give like a half page to each character and have like a little collage of different kind of reference images from from media that kind of show what you're going for. And you do a little bit of like graphic design or stuff like that. Just like have like a good like professional package that you can like show to people, and I think you'll get a lot more like attention or like enthusiasm than you think. Because
Cool. Thanks.
so
I'll definitely try to do that, because one of the things that I'm doing with this project is with the Midnight Oil Company. Eventually, after the like development period of it, I will have for our YouTube channel a version of the pilot. And right now I'm still trying to do the numbers, figure out how many people I have to hire, what that looks like. So it may eventually just be like the script, voice actors, music, and over like an animatic of animation.
yeah, animatics are an awesome idea.
And I think it may be a simple way to show that, but then how else should I show this world? So all your advice about creating a pitch Bible, that's totally something I could do. I could basically do like a Pinterest board with a few descriptions,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that would be great too to put together for the people who I'm like trying to hire to do the drawing, to do the animating. Like, help me, this is what I want. But
yeah, no, I totally get that. And I like there are tons of professional pitches which do that. Like, have you seen the Stranger Things pitch Bible? Because it's full shots from E.T. and The Thing and like all kinds of stuff. Just like whatever they can pull in to kind of get you in like the atmosphere that they're going for. And I think it's like one of the best pitch Bibles I've ever read. So like. Yeah, I think an animatic's is the right way to go about it. The big thing that people overlook with kind of independent projects is sound. So I think even if the animation is simple or jerky, or again, if you're just going with like a black and white animatic like Welcome to Hell by Erica Wester or stuff like that. But if you've got good voice acting, good writing, and like again, most importantly of all, good sound design, that's really what makes the difference, because a lot of the time what people hear dictates what they see. If you really put in the work on the animation, you've got beautiful animation, but the sound is muffled and the voice acting isn't good and all the sounds sound like they came from like a sound Bible stock library, then you feel amateurish. But if you have art that's maybe not up to par, or again is animatics, but the voice acting is good, the writing is good, the audio quality is good, and the sound design is immersive, people will just assume that whatever is on screen is an artistic decision and it's, part of what you're going for. They'll be a lot easier on the visuals if it sounds good.
That's amazing advice. Thank you. That's really helpful.
That's really the big thing I've had to learn over the years, because my early stuff has horrible sound. And it's also because you spend so much time on the designs and and writing and storyboarding everything and finding the right artists. And in my case, spending just 12 hours a day animating stuff, just shot after shot, that when you finally finished it, you're just okay, just push it out there. I want it to be done. But then you gotta step back and say, nope, you gotta really take your time on the sound design and not rush through it, because if you do, then all the work you put into everything else won't mean anything, because people will project as amateur.
Do you usually go voice actor, recording, animation, then sound design, or that's the order? Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's the order. I mean, especially if you're like me and you try to animate to the lip flaps. If you try to make the animation and then have people match the lip flaps, then you're going to end up with pretty unnatural performances. And also, again, a lot of the time, if your voice actors will have great ideas, or will have great ideas for changing up the lines so they sound more natural, or pacing out of the conversation, then you had intended. So, and also concurrent with sound design music, because music is also incredibly important, especially at this point when, I would say stock music is so common in YouTube videos and, TikToks and all kinds of stuff that we're watching. Because at this point, we have heard every single Kevin MacLeod song 5 quadrillion times.
Yes.
Or that sound. If you're doing everything else right, you've set up a really emotional moment and you've built to it beautifully, and the voice actors are given their all and the animation is there, but you start playing that sad violin music, then people are gonna laugh. So that's
amazing.
Yeah,
you're totally right. Because you had more of a bluegrassy type feel in yours, right? Which was a cool pairing with that sort of otherworldly steampunk aesthetic. How did you land on that sound?
Well, I've always really liked the kind of contrast of kind of rootsier music with more fantastical settings, because I think that's a great way to ground the audience in in your world. Because if you have a world that's very fantastical, where again there's literally almost no ground, and there's giant creatures that are shaped like ant skulls that are shooting lasers and all the kind of stuff, it can be a little hard to find your bearings in there. But music's a good way to kind of bring the whole thing down to earth. Over the Garden Wall is a great example of that, because there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on in that, but it's all grounded by the music. I was astonished when I figured out that all of the songs for that show are original, and they weren't folk standards that were just played in it.
Yeah, they really did a great job pairing that kind of sound with this kind of supernatural woodsy world.
And it fits so well too, because again the whole world is inspired by early 20th century Americana, so it fits perfectly. And also what I really love is how the tone of Over the Garden Wall is very very light and satirical and goofy a lot of the time, but the music never matches that. The music is always played straight, and again sometimes the way it's presented is a little funny, like the Highwayman song in that tavern episode where he's like, oh, when you have the road, steal your shoes from off your feet.
Yes,
it's presented goofily, but you hear the song itself, it's this sounds like something Cab Calloway recorded. So
exactly.
Yeah, but that's all off track. So long story short, I think it's a great way to kind of ground the setting. And I'm glad people gravitated to it, because that. And the Song of Breeze was the first song I've ever written. Well, I mean, it's not the first song. I wrote an alternate song that didn't make it into the episode because it was bad. But yeah, I think I wrote a couple of joke songs when I was in college for a sketch comedy show. But yeah, that was the first song I'd ever the first serious song I'd ever written, and people really seemed to like it. So that was kind of out of nowhere. I think honestly, most of that comes down because I got a really good singer to sing it. I was asking around for people who for friends or whatever who could sing it for me, and then my mom said hey, I tutor this kid and she's really good, and she brought her in, and she just knocked it out of the park so hard and made the song, I think, so much more than what it actually is.
That's amazing.
Angela, you're not hearing the song again, are you?
Is there anything down there?
What?
When we fall, will there be anything down there?
Summer breeze.
And yeah, now she's like off, like studying music full time, and like she's got a YouTube channel, and her stuff is like amazing. So I'll shoot you a link at some point. It's really cool.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But, yeah, and then of course then I was like, well, now I'm a great songwriter. So then I wrote songs for the follow-up episode, and I think only like 2 of them are going to be actually in it. But god damn it, one of the things I tried.
That's cool though. I've been trying to figure out ways I want to incorporate music into my work because it feels very natural for me. I come from actually like a musical theater writing background mostly.
No way.
Yeah, but I always knew I didn't want to do something like kind of like how Has Been Hotel, if you're familiar, they're like, we break into song, and I knew I didn't want that. But I was like, I think I will want to write, like, I want to write the theme song. I want to be able to give that to the sound designer and be like, this is generally how I want the world to sound, and work from there, because I love music so much, and I would like to figure out more ways to incorporate music and make it really a character in the show.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What are you listening to these days?
Every once in a while I slip back into like, I just like to turn on the radio and listen to whatever's playing, like a literal like radio. So I was up in Peekskill, New York recently, and that was cool because they had these stations that would kind of just be like, oh, we're gonna play the hits, and the hits were all like songs I hadn't really heard before, mixed with like really popular TikTok songs, mixed with like country music.
Yeah, well, I kind of guess that given the guitar hanging behind your head.
Yeah, exactly. I come from, so in high school I played in an Irish fiddle group for a number of years. Yeah, it was really cool. I played the cello in the Irish fiddle group. So usually when I write music and or when I'm just kind of like idly listening to music, I end up in sort of a bluegrassy / like Irish traditional folk music.
That's awesome. Is any of your like stuff online? Like, is there anything I can check out?
I could probably send you to like my SoundCloud, which has some songs from my like big musical that I've done.
Yeah, please.
So, yeah, cool. I'll send that along to you.
Yeah,
I tend to do like indie rock mixed with a folk sound. Big fan of that.
Love it.
So,
Love it. As far as like adding like music to projects, I think another thing to keep in mind is that songs in in the thing you make can be an amazing like marketing tool. Because honestly, I think one of the main reasons why Song This Guy got as popular as it did was because it had like a song in it that people liked. Because I posted the song by itself and it got like almost as many views as the episode itself. And it goes beyond that. Like, I think for a lot of people, the moment when Steven Universe went from being kind of a cult show to being like a big thing that a bunch of people watched and was part of the cultural conversation was during the last episode with that song that the Garnet sings, "Stronger Than Me," because that's everywhere. It was like a huge meme. Or even more recently, I think like "Toss a Coin to Your Witcher" is like 80% of the reason why the Witcher show got as big as it did, because people were sharing that everywhere, and it was like
cool.
all over the internet. And I like, if someone told me that like the Witcher wouldn't get a second season if it weren't for Toss a Coin to Your Witcher, I might believe them. So,
That's interesting. Well, because actually now that you bring this up, I remember I started watching Adventure Time at the beginning, but people didn't really know about it until suddenly everybody was singing like the Fries song. And so like that show then was like, oh, people like this, and then they kept throwing in more music, which was super cool. That's a good point.
And of course, like Over the Garden Wall is another like great example of that. People, that soundtrack got so popular that I bet it pulled in a ton of new people. So again, not to get all like, I don't know, like inside baseball or whatever, but like I think like having some songs on your thing is usually a good way to pull in people. And again, if you've got like a songwriting background, it's like, hey, put some of what what you're good at into the thing you're making. So
yeah, cool. Thanks for that advice.
I guess I have a little bit of advice for writing pilots, just in general, just like from my experience. I think the big thing you have to do with a pilot is show the goods. If you're like me, you have these great characters in mind, or characters that you love, and you wrote so much backstory for, and you have pages and pages of notes on the world, and concept art and stuff like that. And then when it comes time to actually like decide which story you're going to tell in the pilot, you have basically no idea, because you've got like a million different ideas and a million different things that you want to get across about the world and the characters and stuff like that. But I think the important thing with a pilot is just to show like what a typical episode will offer. Like if your show is going to be about like existential angst and like fighting giant monsters, then you should center it around a giant monster fight, or like Infinity Train. If your series is mostly going to be about exploring different cars and solving mysteries, then you should center it around a mystery in one of the train cars. So I think that's the big thing. It's like you got to give people an idea of what your show is going to look like. Because if your show is all set up, like if you're just like, okay, I need to show people who this character is and what their motivation is, and I have to show as much of this world as possible because that's what people want to see. It's like, you have to keep in mind that like when you're making this episode, as far as everyone watching it is concerned, it disappears outside of the edges of their screen. So what's on there, that's all that counts. And I think the other piece of advice I have, I feel like the conventional wisdom when it comes to writing is always the most important scenes are the first scene and the last scene. And I mostly agree with that, because with the first scene you have to hook people in, and with the last scene you have to end on a good note. And I completely agree with that, especially with the ending, because I think a good ending will make up so much goodwill in people's minds. Like obviously, like I'm my own biggest critic. I look at Song in the Sky and I see all kinds of problems with it, and like, oh man, this should have been edited tighter, and God, I should have gotten a different read on this line, and yada yada yada. But I think, and obviously the art style is a little crude and all that kind of stuff like that. But I think I really nailed the ending. I think that final line, and then you pan underneath the clouds and you see like this big crazy creature, and you're like, what's going on? And then you cut to black. And I think that's the main reason why most people, stuck with the show and want to see the second episode. The ending is incredibly important, because if you screw up the ending, people probably aren't going to want to watch any more episodes of it, even if the rest of it's really good. And if your ending's good, then, even if the rest of it has problems, then people are still going to want to see where it goes. But I think what a lot of people overlook is, and this is just kind of a personal thing for me, I think in a lot of ways, aside from the ending, the most important scene of the episode is the second scene. A lot of the time, your first scene is kind of all flash and no substance, because you want to hook people in. You want to, show them all this cool stuff. And then after that's done, you're like, okay, cool. Now we can actually start the story. And that usually starts with the second scene. And to my mind, at least for me, that's where I usually decide to either keep watching the episode or stop watching the episode. Because, if the first scene is like, okay, that was pretty cool. You had some, cool visuals there, and it seems like, this is setting up a pretty cool world. But then the second scene is like a character hitting an alarm and waking up like, oh, time to start the day. And there's like, and I don't know, like, background or something. I'd be like, okay, this show probably doesn't have as many new ideas as I thought it did. Or
right.
or if it feels like the second scene is just kind of coasting, then a lot of time I'll kind of lose interest or watch something else. But if the first scene's good, and then if you really hook people in the second scene, then I think they're in for it. Like, I think a good example of that is the pilot of Firefly, because the first scene of Firefly, if you'll remember, is all flash. Like it's this big battle scene. There's lots of shooting and explosions and witty one-liners, and the captain comes in and is instantly a likable character, and then it ends with this big crushing character moment for him as the bombers come in and he loses the battle. And then we cut to the present, and I remember when I first watched that episode, I was like, okay, that was a pretty cool opening. They blew their entire budget on that, and I wonder if I'm gonna still enjoy this when I keep watching it. And then the first shot of the second scene is this shot of the night sky, and the upside down helmet of the captain kind of comes into view as he's like floating in the vacuum and talking with his crew, and I was instantly hooked. Like, that's the shot that, like, not all of the flashiness of the first scene that got me. It was that shot that was like, okay, this show has some visual invention to it. It's this is some good banter, and I'm instantly intrigued as to what they're doing and why he's upside down, where he's floating, what he's doing out in space. and that's what got me. And then you have Wash doing the scene with the dinosaurs and Cursor, some inevitable betrayal. And again, I think that is what got most people to keep watching the show. So
That's
it's
true.
like
That's so true. Yeah.
yeah. So again, I'll cut it short, but it's like
No,
you got to get the ending right. The opening should be good, but you really got to nail the second scene, because that's where your show's rhythm is really going to make itself known after because a lot of the time, also the first scene is often kind of a break from formula, like it's like a mini climax in of itself, or you're doing something really interesting with the with the format or with the style or something like that. But it's the second scene where it's like, okay, this is what the show is going to look like. This is how the characters are going to talk and interact with each other. This is what the the visuals are going to look like when we're not blowing all of our money on the big explosive battle scene in the first episode. And I think that's where people usually get wise to whether or not it's going to be a good show. So that's my little advice on there.
That's great. That's not advice that I hear a whole lot, but you're totally right that that's about when I decide to whether I'm going to stick with something or not. So now you have got me like thinking about like, oh gosh, I should revisit that second scene. So that's great. You're like, oh no, it starts with an alarm clock. No, it doesn't.
Oh no, yeah. Oh God, I made so many movies in college that started with kids hitting an alarm clock. I will never live down.
That's amazing.
But yeah, it's like the equivalent of like the 3-episode rule in anime. It's like that's the point where you're like, okay, am I in or am I not? So yeah, that's what I have to say in that regard.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me.
That was a pleasure.
Yeah, this was awesome. You gave me so many amazing words of wisdom.
All right, yeah, dude, thank you so much. This is so fun. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and I will excitedly be following your journey. So
okay, thanks. Yeah, I'll let you know when the second episode's up.
Please do. I'll be waiting for it. So.
Okay, cool. All right, well, yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Nice to meet you. You too. Bye.
Thanks.